As mentioned, I have a crush on Joan Didion. I adore her. I was studying the short fiction form at USF and took a class on the personal essay and read some of Joan's work, and because we're on a first name basis, and fell in love with it, and fell in love with the way that she saw things, and fell in love with the way that she was able to convey it to the reader without overdoing it, and the way she worked out her observations and what that then meant, and the shadows that it cast about periods of time and about emotions and about the essence of things. So I will start. I'm very specifically going to read some writing that is based on impressions and maybe perhaps a modern update on Slouching Towards Bethlehem, which she wrote when she, in 1967, during the whole hippie, flower child, summer of love type of era, which unfortunately I missed out on. But everything always happens again. So she went to the hate, she said, because she said that if she was ever to work again, it would be necessary for her to come to terms with disorder. And from my little spot in the hate, I think I struggle with the same thing. I wrote much of this when I was wandering around Rome, actually. I needed a little bit of distance, and I was suddenly filled with the feeling of dread, and that's pretty much Joan Didion. I also was then inspired by my epigraph that I wrote towards, which is from the book of Mark, because Rome's a very religious place. And I was raised in San Francisco, very Catholic, which is pretty contradictory. But it goes, but when they looked up, they saw that the stone, which was very large, had been rolled away. The idea is that, of course, Jesus is already out of the tomb. He is already risen. There's nothing to look for there, but they're not able to see it. So Joan herself started with Yeats and a poem called The Second Coming. I will read a bit of that, and I'll read some of her work, and then I will read mine. Things fall apart. The center cannot hold. Mere anarchy is loosened upon the world. The blood-dimmed tide is loosened, and everywhere the ceremony of innocence is drowned. The best lack all conviction, while the worst are full of passionate intensity. Surely some revelation is at hand. Surely the second coming is at hand. This is Joan in 67. San Francisco was where the social hemorrhaging was showing up. San Francisco was where the missing children were gathering and calling themselves hippies. When I first went to San Francisco in that cold late spring of 67, I did not even know what I wanted to find out. And so I just stayed around a while and made a few friends. There are only 3 significant pieces of data in the world today, is another thing Chet Holmes told me one night. We were at the Avalon, and the big strobe was going, and the colored lights and the day-glow painting, and the place was full of high school kids trying to look turned on. The Avalon sound system projects 126 decibels at 100 feet, but to Chet Holmes, the sound is just there, like the air. And he talks through it. The first is, he said, God died last year and was obitted by the press. Second is, 50% of the population is or will be under 25. A boy shook a tambourine toward us while Chet smiled benevolently at him. The third, he said, is that they got 20 billion irresponsible dollars to spend. Anybody who thinks this is all about drugs has his head in a bag. It's a social movement, quintessentially romantic, the kind that recurs in times of real social crisis. The themes are always the same: a return to innocence, the invocation of an earlier authority and control, the mysteries of the blood, an itch for the transcendental, for purification. Right there you've got the ways that romanticism historically ends up in trouble, lends itself to authoritarianism. When the direction appears, how long do you think it'll take for that to happen, is a question a San Francisco psychiatrist asked me. We were seeing something important. We were seeing the attempt of a handful of pathetically unequipped children to create a community in a social vacuum. Once we had seen these children, we could no longer overlook the vacuum, no longer pretend that society's automation could be reversed. This was not a traditional generational rebellion. At some point between 1945 and 1967, we had somehow neglected to tell these children the rules of the game we happened to be playing. Maybe we had stopped believing in the rules ourselves. Maybe we were having a failure of nerve about the game. Maybe there were just too few people around to do the telling. These were children who grew up cut loose from the web of cousins and great aunts and family doctors and lifelong neighbors who had traditionally suggested and enforced the society's values. These are children who have moved around a lot: San Jose, Chula Vista, here. They're less in rebellion against the society than ignorant of it, able only to feed back certain of its most publicized self-doubts: Vietnam, saran wrap, diet pills, the bomb. I'm still committed to the idea that the ability to think for oneself depends upon one's mastery of the language. And I'm not optimistic about children who settle for saying, to indicate their mother and father do not live together, that they are from a broken home. They're 16, 15, 14 years old, younger all the time, an army of children waiting to be given the words. And now you get me. This is called Fell Street. It's pretty obvious because I live there. I started with a poem that I wrote myself, and I will just continue. It's pretty self-explanatory. Boys come into the bar, boys you used to know from around, and they say, "Hey, long time no see. How's life?" And you say, "Oh, fine." Except they aren't boys anymore. They're men with wood-paneled hands and soldered brows. And you are still a girl with a boomerang clavicle and a flower in your hair, twisting stems into knots with your tongue. It's mid-morning on the Panhandle. The Google buses and the LinkedIn buses and the Facebook buses make their way down Fell Street. I smoke a cigarette on my stoop and drink a cup of pour-over coffee from Flywheel on Stannion. A homeless kid walks by crying. He stops when he sees me. "Do you know where 15th Street is?" he asks. I want to slink inside, but I see in him that need to say things out loud and have someone listen. He's not wearing shoes. "Sit down, have a smoke," I say. He'd passed out on the sidewalk, he tells me. The ambulance took him to SF General, and the cops took his dog to the pound. He wipes his eyes and rips off his hospital bracelet. "Where are you from?" I ask. His last stop was in Seattle, but he has big Midwestern teeth and a small nose. He's filthy. It's going to be okay, man," I lie. I use my iPhone to get directions and show him which way to walk. Keep going through the whole city, then take a right under the freeway. I watch him head off, barefoot and due east toward the dog pound. "I hope you find your dog," I yell, and he's gone. I run into Peter and Hannah at Club Deluxe on Haight and Ashbury to see a secret set by comedian Margaret Cho. Peter is one of the founders of the Center, a healing arts collective in a former church rectory on Oak and Fillmore. Around the corner is the sister commune, the convent, named for its former purpose as a nunnery. The convent specifically houses musicians, artists, and seekers in 20 tiny rooms. Between the center and the convent is a 100-year-old Catholic church sold to the same developer 10 years ago. The stained glass is still there, and the dark polished wood and the cross up on top. But now it functions as a roller skating rink called the Church of Eight Wheels. Hannah is a friend, a writer, a waitress who is dating an artist from the center. Hannah's boyfriend specializes in stain spotting. This means he finds stains on the sidewalk and uses chalk to draw around it. A creature, a design. And then he posts a pic to Instagram. The people at the center have been informed that I am a writer, although I work full-time for a biotech venture capital firm in Mission Bay. We never mention this. Hannah is excited to tell me about her recent trip. A group of folks associated with the center have just returned from Peru, where they'd spent a week drinking ayahuasca in the Amazon. During the day, locals collected and boiled down leaves and bark into a brew, and in the evening, each visitor drank their share, which, when cooked, is some sort of DMT derivative. Shamans then lead them through a spiritual experience. We trip balls, Peter laughs. I did a lot of spiritual work, Hannah says seriously. She shows me a photo on her phone of a small boy. She explains that she bonded with him during the day she recovered from her journey the night before. The boy has thick black hair, a dark brown face, and a dirty t-shirt. In more photos, Hannah holds his hand as she sits in a hammock. Club Deluxe is packed. Those towards the front agree that someone has broken the rules and tweeted or posted about the event. Now the techies are here and it's ruining some of the vibe. Margaret Cho is off to the side, wobbling in her heels. She wears blue leather pants and a shirt that says, "You can't sit with us." Margaret walks to the microphone, waves for her drink, and dives into a rant about the state of the world and begins crying when she talks about Robin Williams' recent suicide and about divorcing her husband because he's a drug-addicted piece of shit. She tells everyone that she will be busking for change tomorrow in the Castro, handing out money to anyone who needs it. "Come by and get drunk and get laid and help me remember Robin," she slurs. To finish, she strums a guitar and sings a song about her fat pussy. The crowd cheers. The night is over. The center crew begins to gather their many scarves and hats. I speak briefly with folks, listening to them talk about art projects, agreeing to pass word along if I hear of anyone down to split a room for a few $100 a month. The group functions on equal parts camaraderie and escapism, each nearly unaware of their own hustle, but I had met their qualifications. Lately, everyone seems to be asking each other if they've earned the right to be here, even the ones just passing through. Peter tells me in a lowered voice, denoting some sort of confidence, that they've invited Margaret Cho to stay at the convent while she gets her life together. And there will be another secret show tomorrow night. Peter hugs me goodbye, and as he does, he pinches my back fat. The unspoken question hangs in the air. Do I tolerate this? Or more precisely, will I fuck him? "There's a path lit up for you," he says. "You should come to Peru with us next time." "I don't know if it's right for me right now," I say. He places a finger to his lips. "Sadness is a mature emotion," he says, and then hugs me again. Hannah is enthusiastic. She thinks Peter is a great connection, and besides, the ayahuasca will help my melancholy if I am open to do the work. There's a group who may host something local soon, Northern California, she says, but it really should be done like in the jungle. I'm planning on going back. A few months later, I receive an urgent email. Hannah may have to come home early. She's gone off Western meds and has been trying to focus all of the healing hallucinations on her ulcerative colitis. But she cannot keep anything down. 5 days, she writes, barfing all the time, shitting. The shaman says my body is resisting the treatment. Attached is a photo. It is a large pot of jungle leaves and tree bark in a frothing boil over an outdoor fire. My friend Sunshine also grew up in San Francisco. His parents are old hippies who own a bead store. I'm at his house one day when Sunshine points to an older woman. "You see that lady there," he says. She was the little girl in that picture from the 60s, the girl with the flower painted over her eye. No kidding, I reply. I wait for a break in conversation to ask about it. I don't remember any of it, she says, annoyed. People always want to know what it was like, and I don't remember. Sunshine and I text back and forth often. He's just coming down from a bad deal with pharmaceutical opiates that got out of hand. He's better now, looking for a job. Someone was going to hook him up with the hotel and restaurant union, where he boycotted hotels, but it didn't pan out. Now I'm interviewing for a job at the SF Women's Jail, he sends. I thought you didn't want to work with poor people, I text. That was just in retail, he writes back. My father grew up near the Haight in the 60s. He likes to point out a few buildings he painted during the summers in high school, 68, 69, 70. A daycare, an apartment, a corner store that is now somehow $1 million condos. He talks about the time his mother sent him on a sleepover at the Boys and Girls Club on Page Street, and the black kids beat the shit out of him for his sleeping bag. The other day I left my car at his house. He texted me at 7 a.m. I was up early and parked your car outside of your building. Haight Street is one slimy place these days. Luckily, the bus showed up fast. Where do these idiots come from? All soaking wet from sleeping in the park. Hours later, I see them too and wonder how my father could forget. A man who slapped a coat of primer on St. Agnes during the summer of love, he should recognize the type. He should know these aren't the lifers, the ones riding the trains from Seattle to Portland to San Francisco. They're too green to belong to the family who runs the trade near the park and too clean to be gutter punks. These kids lack gear, they lack conviction, they lack the dope marks that help you survive the truancy of a culture. The strong April rainstorm had raged through overnight just a few days after April 20th, and these are leftovers who thought they might as well stick around, stay baked, check out the deal. Kids from the Bay, from Marin, from Humboldt, with homes and families and trig homework. I watch another group of amateurs crawl from the bushes, dirty faces, and baby fat chins, girls wringing their skirts, dogs pausing to shake water from their matted fur. One boy has beer caps knitted into his hair and a Jan Sport backpack covered in anarchy patches, with chaos and love in black marker on the suede bottom. They move in a group towards Haight, blinking and trembling, heads down. Their shoulders hunched, a sense of bewilderment and betrayal rising from them like the fog. Somehow catastrophe has crept in. They've become disconnected, yet they still do not look as afraid as they should be. I'm desperate to tell them the things I have seen, the things I know to be true, the great problem of relevance, or redemption, the ease of judgment from this place by my window. I think of the center and the convent and the church of 8 wheels and the kid without his dog. I think of Hannah and Sunshine and Peter who pinches. What a powerful thing it would be to have anger go in the right direction, I think. What a powerful thing it would be if we understood the difference between revolution and disdain. Thank you.